How many times have you tried to create a healthy self care routine or create some new healthy habits and you've just failed? Until very recently, I used to judge myself very harshly whenever I failed to create a new habit or I failed to follow through on the routines that I know are good for me. I would often use very rigid discipline to force myself to take care of myself. And that worked until I had a bad day, or I wasn't regulating myself very well, or I just ran out of willpower. And then I would have that extra dessert or stay up really late watching that YouTube video because I needed to treat myself. And when I failed to do those routines, I would feel so ashamed. I'd feel so much shame because I knew that I wasn't taking care of myself. And yet, I didn't want to do those things. And I knew that I also needed to treat myself. It was a weird mix where I just wasn't sure what was going on, but I just felt really bad. So recently, I decided to make a change. I decided to stop being so rigid and disciplined and let go of all of my self care habits because I was tired of forcing myself to do things I didn't want to do. And so, in the name of self compassion, I stopped. And that is when I learned what a self care routine actually means, why we fail with them, and what would actually work if we really wanted to do this. In this video, I'll share with you why I stopped, what happened when I stopped, the epiphany I had about self-care routines, and then I'll give you some fundamental takeaways that you can use to reevaluate your idea of self-care routines if you want to improve this area in your life. It happened slowly. An extra dessert here, a skipped workout there, a quick YouTube video to fall asleep to because I was struggling with my sleep and it would help. And thanks to my newfound awareness skills, I noticed that my self care habits were slowly slipping away. And that was when I decided I'm being compassionate to myself now. And sometimes I feel like I'm really forcing myself to do this, and I have to get very rigid and disciplined in a way that I don't like. What if I let them go and saw what happened? So then I lived with very minimal self care. And you know what? I was fine. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself just to be how I wanted to be. I didn't impose all these routines and regimens on myself that I thought were good for me and I had to do to take care of myself. The only principle that I had stuck to was that I had to constantly be aware of what was going on within me. Because awareness is the only thing that you have that can actually monitor how you're doing and potentially help with any changes you'd like to make. So I was living my life with minimal self care and I felt fine. You know, I wasn't as sensitive as I might like to be. I wasn't as conscious as I might like to be. I wasn't super switched on or anything like that, but I was just getting by, you know? And in fact, I was probably slightly better at work because I would use work to help regulate myself. I fell into a little bit of the workaholism that I used to suffer from. And so I would be really plugged in and focused at work, and I probably got more done than I would have done previously. But then I hit a limit. I noticed what was missing. I wasn't as sensitive as I like to be. I wasn't as conscious. I didn't feel as comfortable in my body, and I wasn't as switched on as I feel like I really can be. And then there was the issue of my anxiety. I was able to distract myself from my anxiety by numbing myself with food or YouTube or work. But what would happen is the pattern that's happened all of my life, where it would slowly build up in the background as I distracted it, but it would keep building up, and eventually it would overwhelm me and burst through, and I would just feel so flattened by life. I couldn't take it, and it really knocked me off kilter for a number of days. I was mostly living up here in my head, ignoring my feelings, and just trudging on day by day, getting through. And I know myself, and if I'm really honest, I was being mediocre. I was being a mediocre version of myself. I was settling for a distracted life, a life where I squashed down my true potential, my true feelings, my true experience of life just to tarry on because it was easier to make those short term decisions to distract myself rather than follow some sort of caring routine that gave me structure to really allow all of myself to be. And it was that feeling that made me realize I want more. I can be more. And so the big takeaway that I got was that your self care routine doesn't actually matter. You can get through life without self care. You may suffer and struggle and it'll be difficult, but you'll still live. But if you want a good life, if you want to feel well in your body and you want to live to your potential and be yourself and enjoy living, then a self care routine really helps with that. And what you need to do is create a life that requires you, demands of you to be better. And so I knew that I had to change something. And so I began reintroducing some of my healthy habits, slowly and with a focus on how I felt when I did them. I was not being rigid with it. I could give up or stop doing anything that I wanted at any time. The only thing that I had to commit to was noticing how I felt in my mind and my body and in my spirit and how I was dealing with my emotions. That was all I had to do was just be aware. And from there, I picked up my healthy habits again and I tried them all out. And I was like, what actually works in this for me and what doesn't? What have I just been told that might work? And I readjusted to what I wanted and to a way that it worked for me. I found that I need sleep because if I don't sleep, then I don't have enough energy to work out. And if I don't work out, I don't like how I feel in my body and I don't feel sharp. I added back journaling because journaling connects me with myself. And if I don't check in with myself, then all sorts of different parts within me start bubbling up and are like, pay attention. And that comes out in ways that's really unhelpful if I don't check in on a daily basis. And I also had it in prayer and surrender because the number one way that I found to deal with my anxious feelings is to give them up to God. And it just releases me in a way that nothing else ever has. So I didn't start taking self-care more seriously again because I was rigid and disciplined and imposing a routine that made me feel like I need to be this certain way. I did it because I had experienced consciously by noticing the cost of not doing it. So here is the main takeaway of this video. You can't force a healthy routine upon yourself. You have to let it emerge from within you by noticing the cost of what it feels like to not have that compared to what you know you can be and what you know you want and you deserve. And then you try those out and stack them slowly in a sustainable way. And it's an ever going process that ebbs and flows with your life. But that's okay. You don't have to judge yourself for that. And it's totally okay if you are in a stage of life where you don't want to have a routine and you don't want to do this self care stuff. Or you try a little bit and then you fail. And then maybe a couple of weeks later you try again. And maybe a little bit sticks, but then you let some of it go. That is totally fine. The failure isn't in trying and stopping. Failure is only when you go through something and you repeat the same thing over and over and over again and you fail to notice what's going on. But you can end that process at any time just by creating more awareness of what's going on. You can live a good enough life just by distracting yourself and trudging along. But if you want a life that is more, if you want to truly be yourself, if you really want to make your mental health strong and robust, and you want to enjoy everything that life has to offer, the price of that is having good self care habits. And what changed for me in letting it all go was I learned what it felt like to not have that. And now, rather than imposing it upon myself in a rigid and disciplined way, I already have this feeling within me of, if I don't do that, it's going to hurt more than the temporary discomfort of me choosing to do it now. Because sometimes, I don't want to journal, I don't want to read, I don't want to pray, I don't want to work out. But I'm connected now with the broader, greater suffering of not doing that. And so it's easier for me to make that choice. And I'm not forcing it. Sometimes I am. Life is sometimes doing things you don't want to do and just forcing yourself to. But now, finally, for the first time in my life, I'm not forcing myself to do it. I've connected with why I do it. And it just makes everything so much easier. So, in summary, let go of any judgment that you have around how you've been with establishing self-care routines. There is no such thing as failure here. You always have the chance to be better and to do differently. And you don't even need a self-care routine. As I said, if you can find the bare minimum that keeps you well and gets you through life, that's brilliant. But if you want to really maximize who you are as a person, then having a self-care routine where you are in touch with why you do it on a deep personal level and an emotional level, that's where the real momentum and ability to follow through comes from. And it becomes a positive feedback loop, because the more you create these healthy habits, the more you enact these healthy habits, the better your life will be. And the better your life will be, the more life will demand of you to live to your full potential. And that positive loop will just take you up and up and up and up. And sometimes you might take 2 steps forwards and 3 steps backwards. But now you have compassion for yourself and you can go, this is a phase of life where I'm not super in my habits, but that's okay, because you can always come back when you're ready. I hope this video has been helpful if you've ever struggled with establishing a self-care routine for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit like and subscribe to see more content like this. Take care, and I will see you again soon.